The opening of Wes Craven's seminal A Nightmare on Elm Street is an all-timer. It's grimy and transgressive. We see an iconic, nasty weapon built, and a legend in horror cinema born. Freddy Krueger would evolve through the 80s, from a pure evil child murderer to a rascally, demented, and, for lack of a better term, charming anti-hero. To create the knife-handed nightmare, Craven looked to terrifying moments from his own childhood, tapping into primal fears of strangers, loss, and violence, creating a boogeyman that has shook audiences to their core since 1984. Personal trauma has always played a part in authors and filmmakers tapping their own experiences to spawn tales of terror. In 1897, a crab meat-fueled nightmare is said to have inspired Bram Stoker to write Dracula. Fear of nuclear destruction brought an atomic load of gigantic monsters throughout the Cold War era, while Psycho, Jaws, and The Exorcist were ripped from the headlines. Freddy Krueger came from a much more personal place for Wes Craven. Born in Cleveland, Ohio, Craven was raised in a strict Baptist family and rarely watched movies, much less horror films. Laying in bed one night, the young Craven heard shuffling and mumbling on the sidewalk outside his second-floor apartment. It was a man in an overcoat and a sort of fedora hat, Craven explained in Never Sleep Again, The Elm Street Legacy. The man outside had caught Craven spying on him from the bedroom window, and the future master of horror quickly looked away, cowering in fear, hoping that when he looked back down, the man would be nothing but a terrifying memory. But just like in a horror movie, when Craven looked back, the man remained, staring directly at him. The thing that struck me about that man, Craven continues, was that he had a lot of malice in his face. He also had this sort of sick sense of humor about how delightful it was to terrify a child. A subversive and, at times, silly sense of humor became Freddy Krueger's calling card throughout the franchise's 7-film run. However, Freddy didn't truly become the Henny Youngman of horror until the third entry, Dream Warriors. But the character had been spouting twisted one-liners from the moment he, inhabiting the visage of a teen girl in pigtails, but with his glove and iconic sweater, declared to Nancy, "No running in the hallway." Craven weaponized his childhood fear and used it to terrify audiences. Unlike his faceless slasher peers, Freddy isn't a force of nature with a knife, machete, or chainsaw. He's a sadist who delights in terrifying and toying with his victims before finally brutally slicing and dicing them with his glove. So much of Freddy Krueger was born of Craven's youth. Krueger was the name of Craven's childhood bully, who must have left a nasty impression on the young filmmaker. In Craven's debut feature, the infamously sleazy exploitation classic Last House on the Left, Craven gave David Hess's character the shortened moniker Krug. In the Elm Street series, parents, at worst, are abusive or absent. At their best, they simply don't understand. Losing a parent at a young age can seriously affect a child, and so much of the climax of the original Nightmare concerns Nancy's fear of losing her mother. Themes of dysfunctional family life inform much of Craven's work, particularly Elm Street, and the character of Freddy Krueger. "My older brother and I both used to worry about dying at 40, because our father died at 40, Craven told New York Times Magazine in 2011. Craven's father was distant, with a violent temper. He passed away when Craven was only 4 years old, leaving his hyper-religious mother to raise Wes and his 2 siblings. Tapping into primal fears, rooted in trauma, cut to the core of unsuspecting audiences through the Reagan era and beyond. And Freddy Krueger became the horror hit that dreams are made of for the fledgling New Line cinema, inspiring countless nightmares. Despite his supernatural nature, it's the very real and very personal fears in Freddy Krueger's DNA that make him a timeless terror icon.